I wanted to use this opportunity to kind of reflect my current performance modality. I've just put out an album. I've been playing with Ableton Live for about 12 years now. Feel old. But I currently perform in a band. I am a keyboard player, synthesizer, that's my background. And then slowly, after doing a lot of tabletop sets, well, I call them tabletop sets, but basically using controllers, performing in the session view. Over time, back in India, where I've been doing most of my shows, there was a desire to pull more people into that world and into the set. And currently, it's like 6 people or 9 people or as many people as can fit on stage. And part of why I've chosen to perform in the arrange view is because it has the ability to kind of be very modular and rope people in. This is my set. I'll break it down in a second. There's not a lot going on, and there's definitely not a lot of audio in here. But yeah, the intention to collaborate has pushed me in the direction of moving away from the session view. And although the session view is an incredibly improvisational space, I find that the arrange view creates kind of a container, which makes it really easy to totally leave the grid, kind of go into free sections that feel like they break metronomy because you've got something to tether you to bring you back, like the timeline will wait for no one. And it keeps you a little bit more on the edge. You kind of have to practice more because there's less scope for trying things over or doing things over in real time. But the benefit, I feel, is that it keeps the set really dynamic, and it's very easy to pre-design moments of a lot of tension and then like sudden changes, and to have many people do it together. The only way that I found to actually be feasible is to use it more in playback mode, but it doesn't need to mean that there's audio playing back necessarily. So the main concepts or approaches that I've used today to to lean on repetition. One of them is feedback. So my Novation Peak, which is the synth that I started playing with, I'm just using this loop of feedback to kind of have a sense of repetition, and it fades out over a long period of time. That is not on a grid, and that's happening. I have to keep a ear out for that, and whenever that's dying down, I kind of feed more information into that feedback loop. The other, which is live specific, and then there's a live 12 specific version that I want to talk about, is looping in a range view, which is very underrated, I think. It really is like true hands-free looping, because you have the looper as a device can be automated. Its states can be automated. And in a way, I feel like you can create a container for you to just have exactly the right input at the right time. And then so long as you don't mess it up, it will loop back perfectly. You can also have automation drawn in to make changes happen for you. Again, coming to this approach was sort of answering the question, what do you want to be doing live? Like, what do I want to be doing live? I think for me, and maybe some of you can relate, there's like a feeling that I need to tap into to feel like I'm performing. And that has to do with risk a little bit, but it also has to do with dynamism. And having a looper hold that room for you to just turn to your instrument, or like basically not having to menu dive and alter all your parameters, being really specific about what you do want to alter. So for me, program changes are going from Ableton to my synthesizer. My patches are preset. I've designed them, and the moment I put my hands on my keyboard, I will expect the patch to have changed. And there's only a couple of things that I want to do. Maybe it's like the amp envelope or the filter cutoff. Yeah, so that's basically being sent here. Repetition via feedback, live looping, and the arpeggiation. And so let me actually just break down the set. Setup is there's a push 3, there's an Novation Peak, there's this MIDI keyboard, nothing else. Here I have a cue track, and I've got all these set markers, which is basically like my index or content. So I am following along, and I mean, ideally you have this down for memory, but if you don't, and I didn't today, then I know what I'm expected to do because I have a set marker prompting me. This group is all of my channels, and this is purely for monitoring. Here is my peak group, where program changes are being sent to my outboard synth. Very handy. You can also have automation sent. I don't have any of that here at the moment. And maybe I can start by talking a little bit about the synths that I have going on. I have 3 instances of meld, and the reason that this actually works, and the thing I was worried about, is scale mode in Live 12 is super handy. Oh, you can't really see it up there, maybe. Is that better? I mean, you all know what Live looks like, so never mind. But I've set the scale of this set to B flat minor pentatonic. We all agree it's the best scale. It basically is my global scale, and then you can have devices inside or outside that scale now that there are synths that are scale aware. And I'll just show you an example of this particular synth where, so right now this instance of meld is in scale aware mode, and that's done something really interesting to this detune function on the engine. I'm gonna solo it and play it, and yeah. So I have an LFO, like an external LFO, modulating this detune, but I'm going to put scale awareness off for a second, and this is what it sounds like. Sounds great, but I don't know if it really would work for what I'm trying to get it to do. It doesn't feel like an ARP, which it isn't, but in scale awareness on, it's like the bulk of what I'm doing is really playing this synth in this set. And that kind of, to me, it's like not really, it doesn't really work like detune works like auto-tune. Scale awareness is kind of boshing things into place. And there's a lot of really cool things that I discovered only in this last week in preparation for this, where I was like, oh my God, I'm going to end up using scale awareness a lot more. Even ARPs are scale aware. And I think that there's some really interesting stuff that can happen at the intersection of MPE capability and scale awareness, because you have, well, with this controller, you have this feeling of wanting to push in and wanting to slide your fingers up and down now that it is MPE capable in this way. And with, let me actually pull this up so that I can show you an example of it. I have expression control sending on the actual track, like sending on the channel of the meld pad with pressure, for example, and it's triggering my send on this track. So you can single certain things out when you're playing if you are conscious enough to have only certain things being sent to return tracks, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's something you couldn't do before within one device. So there's like way more control there. The other thing that you can do that I don't think you could do before is scale awareness on an ARP. And this definitely is something that I've used to create a sense of repetition, although there's no actual live looping happening. It's just an ARP continuing to play. The things that you can modulate here are again getting knocked into the scale if scale awareness is on. So I'll turn the ARP off and I'll try and demo that. It makes a little bit more sense if you're using this not in, like if you were to be using it in chromatic mode on this keyboard, because right now we are constrained to this key. But this is definitely something to play with. Both the arpeggiator and the chord device are both now scale aware. So that's my lead. This is another synth. It's a wavetable, and I just have one instance of MIDI in this piece that is being sent to this synth, and I wanted to use MIDI tools to generate this. So I used Seed. Ableton's new generative tools are kind of amazing to come up with a bank of stuff that you then ideally need to pick and choose from or curate and design. But the process of doing that has become really, really fast. There's a lot to choose from. Of course, it works great with rhythms, but definitely for melodic things, because now the piano roll is also scale aware, it becomes very easy to move things around, and I didn't technically write this. So coming back to the approach of sort of wanting to be in collaboration with the equipment, that's how I was thinking about it, because like I said, I don't normally perform alone these days, and thinking of having a setup where I was working with everything and feeding back off of it, which is kind of what feeds my version of performance. It just felt nice to not have written the one piece of MIDI information that's getting sent to the synth. And then I can open up some automation. This is what my loopers are doing, all of the heavy lifting. Ableton's loopers also work in reverse, which is really great. It's really handy if you've played something and then you want to break the feeling of that loop station feeling of you play it and then it plays over again. So this is like you play it, but then it plays back in reverse, and that's already kind of a dynamic sort of elevation. That's pretty much all that's going on in here. Maybe we... Yeah, or, I mean, I have a part 2, but I don't know whether whether I play that and open up for questions, or maybe we do questions now and then I have another 5 minutes of music. Cool. Sure, yeah.
I was wondering, what is your process like when you're writing a new piece, like where do you start?
It depends. I think because I'm a piano player first, I really like the idea of having a tactile, like my first instrument is the keyboard, so I like going there, and then that gives rise to many things, but I have many different ways of doing it. Sometimes it's with a groove. Quite often I feel like I need to take a break from a screen, so I prefer not to start with a blank. It can be a little intimidating to have a blank, a blank set. I prefer to use a controller, use a synthesizer, come up with some seed and then build from there. Yeah. Yeah,
Could you show us how you're handling program changes to the feed?
totally. So I guess effectively these would be dummy clips. So I would just like make a dummy clip. And then in this section of here, you've got this, this section that has bank, sub, and program. And effectively, I know that the synth that I want, once you have connected it either via USB cable, some older synths would use like a MIDI DIN cable. I didn't bring one of my synths because for that reason. So ordinarily I would have more outboard gear, but yeah, if you have USB is a great way to send that information. And then if I'm here, as soon as it hits that program change, I'm in the much nicer, much prettier synth patch. Yeah, that's about it. I do all the sound design outboard, and then I just send the information straight from these MIDI clips. You can also set them up in session view, and then it's just triggering a dummy clip. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm just curious about you personally, your preference. When you're programming melodic or harmonic content, when do you prefer to use like a traditional like MIDI keyboard controller versus like the note function on the push?
So I almost always use the MIDI keyboard. I think that there is a lot to be gained from moving away from it, for sure. As soon as you are in a pattern of creativity or production, especially production process, where things like shortcuts and routine get so embedded into your system, it becomes very easy to just patternize and do the same thing. And so this isn't my push, this is a loaner unit, but I would not have come up with this stuff on the keyboard. It's really nice to break that line of thought, I feel. But it's kind of like a weakness to just, my hands just go there and I'm like, I know, B flat minor pentatonic, right? But, yeah, it's nice to have different options for sure.